Because adoption means the full, complete benefits of family. In the last 4 years, we have gone through Christmas here in the book of Matthew. We've gone through Christmas in the book of Luke. Somehow we went through Christmas from the book of John, because John has nothing about the Christmas story. And in one of the years, we also went through the Christmas, we went through Advent by going through Old Testament texts that look forward to the coming of Christ. So this year, and it should never shock anybody when I want to run to Paul, I want to go through Christmas looking at Paul. And in one way we say, wait a minute, Paul came much later, and while that's true, Paul wrote later, but he also wrote his letters about 20 to 25 years before Matthew and Luke wrote their Gospels. So what Paul wrote about the coming of Christ is 20 to 25 years before the Gospels. So I want to look at these first words about Jesus' arrival through the eyes of Paul. So this Advent, I'm going to look at things through Paul's eyes. Turn to the book of Galatians, if you would. There we go. Whoop. I don't know what's going on up here. Oh well. It's on there. So I'll just look here. So here's in the latest version of the NIV, Galatians chapter 4, verses 3 through 5. Also, when we were underage, another version, while we were yet children, we were in slavery under the elemental spiritual forces of the world. But when the set time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. Let me go back in time a little bit, 2,000 years ago. Those were dark days. Rome controlled all of the known world. Now, I know that there were the Ming, the dynasties in China, and I know there were a lot of what were viewed as wild and backward tribes in northern Europe. The Visigoths and the Huns and the Vandals who toilet papered their way across Europe. No, that's a joke. There were a tribe called Vandals, but that's not what they did. But Rome controlled all the known world, all the civilized world. We started with Egypt. They had a mighty, empire, and then we went to Babylon, and we went to Persia, and all of those empires were now controlled by Rome, from Egypt in the south all the way to Scotland in the north, from Spain in the west all the way to Iran, Afghanistan in the east. That is a huge area, all under the control of Rome. The Jews were just small players. They were kind of a backwater province of the Roman Empire. They didn't really add much to Rome. However, if Egypt ever decided that they would rebel, well, they'd have to go through Palestine to get there, and Rome would be notified. If anybody in modern-day Babylon or the ancient Persian Empire were to decide to rebel against Rome, they'd have to go through that area. So as long as Palestine was peaceful, everything was good. In charge of it all was a Caesar who, for the first time, was starting to be called the Son of God. We can jump forward one. That's his picture right there. Caesar Augustus. And Rome controlled everything. But the Jews wanted freedom. They believed that it was their right to be in control. They wanted to control their own destiny. They thought God would set up a new kingdom and they'd be in charge of the whole world. The temple would be the centerpiece of everything that happened. But at that time, 2,000 years ago, that was not on the horizon at all. Rome had it all. And if you lived in Palestine, not only did you pay Rome taxes, you paid taxes to King Herod. You got double taxed. Herod loved to build stuff. At the first century, he was in the middle of building the temple. And I mean, at that time, it would have been big enough you could have seen it from a satellite. It was more than a quarter of a mile long, an eighth of a mile wide. They took Temple Mount, basically chopped the top right off of it, used it to fill the valleys, and created this vast flat space up at the top. Rome used this new thing called concrete and made this perfectly level floor. And Herod was in charge of all the building because the Jews paid taxes. So much of the literature, if you read Isaiah and Zechariah, they had promised that there'd be some big new kingdom. A renewed Israel, Zion being reestablished. The kingdom would be fully renewed and God would be in charge. But here it was the first century, and nothing like that was even remotely on the horizon. Israel was weak, they were powerless, and Rome was in charge, and probably about 90% of the Jews had abandoned all hope for anything like that happening again. However, there was this little small, maybe 10%, who still thought it might happen. They were devout, they were committed, and you knew who they were because unlike the rest of them, who all named their children stuff like Johannes or Cephas or James or even Bartholomew, Nathaniel, I'm going through all the disciples, they named their children different. See, all those names are kind of Greek versions of Jewish names. But this 10%, they would name their children after the patriarchs that you read about in Genesis and Exodus. So if they had a son, they might name him Isaac or Jacob or even Joseph. And if they had a daughter, they might name her Miriam or Mary. And we get a little picture of the family that Jesus was born into. There's no kingdom and no renewal in sight. Rome is in charge. There is no hope for anything being different. And yet, Paul says here, when the time had fully come. Now, in the translation I just read, I wish I'd have been there. They had said when the set time had come. That's an awful, terrible, horrific translation. When the time had fully come. When the time was just right. When everything was lined up. God came. And it wasn't lined up in a way that we would think. And times are a little dark right now. Fear is once again in control. And I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. And unfortunately, I'm just getting to the part of life where I can say that, and it means a little something in my lifetime. Because I'm looking back over a pretty good amount of time. Let me just say a few things. There's always reasons to be cautious. There's always reasons to be aware. There's always reasons to be careful what you're doing. We're living one of those times right now. That's why we have 2 services on Sunday. It's why half the chairs are picked up. It's why everything's spaced. It's why we have hand sanitizer everywhere. We're all trying to be a little bit smart. But that's not what most people are responding to today. What we do now is we half hear one thing, kind of half hear it, take it the worst possible way we can spin it, and then live like that's a reality. Let me give you examples. We have people today, parents lock their kids in the house to protect them from a virus that poses far less of a threat to kids than just the average flu. That's a fact. People, literally, if you take a walk on the sidewalk, you see someone come on the sidewalk, people swerve into the street. People literally walk out into traffic to avoid you. To somehow keep from catching something, and that's not how it's passed at all. That's a fact. But we've long given up reason. We've let fear and political responses determine how we live and react to others. I was talking this week about a church. If you want to go to church on Sunday, you have to call ahead and make reservations. If you don't have reservations to attend, you're not allowed in. Can I suggest that someone's gone off the tracks just a bit? There's something, and call me old-fashioned, call me crazy, call me whatever, but I think that if someone wants to wander into a church on Sunday, I think the church should be open for people. We are deeply divided. We blame our leaders. Can I tell you something? Our leaders don't cause our division. We elect people to go fight the other side. And if they don't fight that other side, then we don't elect them anymore. And if we want to find out the people responsible for division, well, there's a bathroom mirror in every house, and usually it's us. Our leaders reflect the division that exists. And really, in culture, it's pretty starkly divided on a whole host of things. I don't know that there's renewal in sight right now. I wish I could be a really big optimist. We seem powerless to bring about a gap. We expect someone there to bridge a gap that exists here. Maybe again today the time is right for God to come in a new way in all our collective lives. In another dark time. Because it's seeming like when God comes, it is completely disconnected with whether we think it's good times and the best times. We consider, hey, how about maybe 3 years ago the economy was booming, everything was good. That's when God should really pop into our lives, but that's typically not what happens. God pops in all our personal dark days. Paul starts off this passage by saying, and I'm reading out of another version that says, while we were children, we were enslaved under the basic principles of the world. In what we read earlier, it says elemental spiritual forces. Let me stop here. There's a Greek word called stoicheia. Don't be impressed. It's a word that we really have trouble understanding what the meaning is, because we can't find any other uses of it. Paul seems to have either made it up, or there was some word that other Greek people just didn't use. This is a word that Paul is unique, and we really don't know exactly what it means. We have one group over here that says it means live under basic superstitions and fears. There's a lot of people who live that way. There are people that wake up in the morning, get to their newspaper, they turn to their horoscope to see what's going to happen that day, because they're under the impression that where the planets were when they were born has more impact of their lives than their decisions. You go to a Chinese restaurant, the little paper menu tells you if you were born the year of the rat or the rabbit or the donkey or whatever all the other ones were. And here's your traits by what year you were born. I was born in 1964. I've met a lot of really nice people born in 1964, and I've met some other not nice people born in 1964. And I went to high school with all of them. That's why this picture's up. We don't walk under a ladder. We get nervous if a black cat crosses our path. Now, we're all guilty of it. I understand. All of you have been watching a football game with family and your team's been winning. They're scored 3 straight touchdowns. And they have all the momentum. And then someone gets up to use the bathroom. And you say, no, sit down. Don't you mess up this comeback. If you get up and go refill your nacho plate, you're going to ruin the mojo. Sit back down. When I was a teenager and playing baseball, if we would win the game, I would come home and hide my socks from my mother because she wanted to wash them. Can you imagine someone so dim wanting to wash socks that had just won a game? You are going to wash the winds right out of the fabric. The year we won 10 or 11 in a row, there was a special aroma coming from the bottom of my closet. But you can't wash them. Not until you lose. We still live like that. I'm not talking about the little things that don't mean anything, but there are people who never get out from under kind of this basic level of fear. Even their faith. If I pray a certain amount of time, if I do a certain thing, if I read my Bible, then God will like me and God will do this, and it never gets past this basic transactional superstition level. How about the other level, where it says some basic elemental form of religion? People that live life by rule book. Christianity's not doing this, not saying this, not doing that. In high school, we had a guy in town, he ran a restaurant. He had an Italian last name. Everybody knew he was connected. You all know what I'm talking about? And so my friend Danny, his dad knew him because he was also did food stuff, and they would run into each other. And my friend Danny's dad would get parlay cards on Wednesday. Now, we all have these online stuff. Parlay cards is when they had like 50 college games and all the NFL games. You get the cards on Wednesday with the line, the betting line of the game. And I think you had to at least pick 4 games. And you turn in your $2. And if all 4 games won, you got like 10. If you pick 5, you'd win 15, or 6, you'd win 20. You know, all that kind of thing. And we'd pick our games. I put my $2 in because I was going to get $20 back. And I don't know how many weeks I did that. 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And I realized I'm wasting money here. And if you know me, I hate wasting money. And so I quit doing it. Here's what we do sometimes. In faith, we have all these rules. We don't know the why behind it. And pretty soon it just becomes following a rule book. Don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do the other thing. Don't get divorced because it's evil. No, don't get divorced because there's something sacred and special and right and holy about loving one person. We go to a 50th anniversary celebration and see the husband and wife kiss by a 50th anniversary cake, and people tear up because they know they're seeing something special and unique and sacred. It's not, don't do it because it's bad. Don't do it because there's this greater thing that we're losing. Most people never get there. I think that's why Paul says they're children while we're under age. We don't understand yet. So which is it? Is it people living under this basic level of superstition or some elemental level of religion? And I would say yes. I think both might be in line here. But Paul says, while we were yet children, immature, not fully formed, we tend to think of everything as good and bad, binary, black, white. Paul speaks differently. When we're kids, we want to grow up. When we're a novice, we want to become an expert. When we don't know much, we want to learn everything. When it comes to faith, we shouldn't be like a child. We should want to become adults, fully participant. When the fullness of time, see, the time when God speaks to us is not based on our schedule, nor is it based on when we have everything together. So many times, Pastor, I'll start coming to church when I get all my life in order. When I get everything straightened out, I'll be there. But that's not how God works. God did not wait for all the world to be straightened out before He came. God meets us where we are. When the fullness of time, at just the right time, God came. Even though you look at Caesar and Bethlehem, that no one would have considered that a right time. Yet Paul says, when the fullness of time, when just the right time came, God arrived. If God speaks to us, that is our time, regardless of where our life is at the moment. He ends by saying, He sent His Son, born under law, to redeem those under the law, to remove the penalty, remove the curse that stands against us. The wall of sin that we keep butting our heads up against has been removed. We can be redeemed. We can have that penalty taken away. The last thing, we can be adopted into a new family. We not only lose the things that stand against us, we can gain something greater. Now, I'm not trying to cast aspersions, but so many times in my life, I get to a point and they find something out about me. They find out that I was adopted when I was a kid. And I tell them I was adopted. This has happened dozens of times. And someone says, oh, do you know who your real parents are? And I go, well, yes, I've grown up with them for 18 years. Because adoption means the full, complete benefits of family. One of the memories that still brings a smile to my face, I was 10 or 11, which meant my brother was 8 maybe or 9, somewhere in there. He was always a little weasel at that point. And there was one night, I don't know what we were arguing about or he had done or I had done, but Mom was in the kitchen, and our little tiny house, our family room and kitchen were like one big room, and we were sitting in there, and in front of Mom, my brother looked at me and said, "Well, you're not my real brother anyway." And I just smiled because I knew what was about to happen. My mom turned 2 steps toward the refrigerator because on top of the refrigerator was a board with a handle. And she grabbed that thing and made a beeline right for my brother. It was a paddle. And she was coming right after him. And I knew all I had to do was sit back and enjoy the beating. And my job was just to be a goalie. If my brother tried to get away, I would just snag him and throw him back into play. That never really bothered me because for some reason I felt fully a part of the family, and I knew my brother was a weasel and barely could make his way through the day, so I didn't worry about much what he said. He's better now. We don't lose the things that stand against us, and there's a lot that stands against us. We live in a world that says if you just authentically live out whatever naturally is within you, that is a good thing. And folks, that's not a good thing. Successful people will have to fight our nature at some point because we're greedy, or we're lustful, or we're prideful, or we're angry, or a host of other things. But not only do we get to redeemed from the stuff that stands against us, we get a new family. And hopefully we are to reflect in life the values of that new family. Live worthy of our heavenly calling in Christ Jesus. We're supposed to love everyone like we do ourselves. We're even inheritors of eternal life. We have an inheritance of a whole range of other benefits just from being part of God's family. And that's available for all of us. It's available for all humanity, but me at a personal level. And if God is speaking to you today, this is your time. This is your time. To be something better, different than you ever were before. Created to be, taking away those things that stand in our way. This can be your day.